Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Emily Campagno, Harold Ford Jr., Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. A defiant dictator having his day in court ousted Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro, claiming that he was kidnapped, and he and his wife plead not guilty to a sweeping list of drug trafficking and weapons charges. Maduro telling the judge, quote, "I am innocent. I am not guilty. I am a decent man. I am still president of my country." All of this comes after a breathtaking dead-of-night capture at the hands of the U.S. military. President Trump defending the move to arrest Maduro.
What really played is the fact that he sent millions of people into our country from prisons and from mental institutions and drug dealers and every drug addict in that country, in his country, was sent into our country. The fact that he sent drugs into our country, we're stopping it rapidly.
So what comes next for Venezuela? Interim President Delcy Rodriguez is now vowing to cooperate with Washington after President Trump warned that she could suffer a fate worse than Maduro if Caracas does not work with his team. The goal? Likely access to Venezuela's vast oil reserves after U.S. companies were pushed out decades ago.
Don't ask me who's in charge, because I'll give you an answer and it'll be very controversial.
What does that mean?
It means we're in charge. We're going to have the big oil companies go in. They're going to fix the infrastructure, and they're going to invest money. We're not going to invest anything. We're going to just take care of the country. We need total access. We need access to the oil and to other things in their country that allow us to rebuild their country.
And Happy New Year, everybody. We get right back to it. Jesse, maybe start with you on just the overall news, the big picture, the shock and awe of it.
Sure. Audacious, Dana. First, big props to Delta Force. These guys go in on Night Stalkers in the dead of night, take on enemy fire, land, blowtorch the doors off this fortress, kill all of these Cuban bodyguards, and then capture this tyrant and his wife right as they were about to get into this steel safe house. They cuff them, they bring them home. Absolutely incredible when you think about what could have gone wrong. You could have had a Mogadishu situation under Clinton. You could have had hostages like they did in Iran under Jimmy Carter. But this was a perfect operation. You know what it reminds me of? My back surgery. Donald Trump's like my surgeon. He's elegant and he's precise. And he went in there with the perfect extraction. You get this guy out of here. But Dana, this is not regime change. This is just trying to change the regime's behavior. Remember, the regime is still intact. So you have this vice president who we're going to have to deal with. Now, I don't know whether she is an ideologue, a thief, a nationalist. We're about to find out.
She might be our asset.
She could be. We don't know yet, but time will tell. But when Trump says we're going to run the country, what he means is we have a naval blockade, so we control the cash flow. We know what goes in, what goes out. So we know who gets paid. And if we don't want them to get paid, we can decide that. Or we can send in more commandos or more missiles, depending on people, if they behave or not. So what does behaving look like? That's the big question. They have to stop doing business with our enemies, the cartels, the communists, and Hezbollah. They have to stop pouring narcotics and migrants into our country. And they have to give us back our oil rights, which they stole. And judges have agreed these have been stolen from us. So if you have it's basically like the Spanish Saudi Arabia. They have more oil under the ground than the Saudis do. So you get the Western companies back in there, you get it back online, and what does that do? It makes Venezuela more prosperous, America more prosperous, keeps energy prices low, which starves the Putin war machine, keeps inflation down, which is good for the economy, and it isolates the Iranians, and it makes us the seller of oil to China. Now, we might not have elections for quite some time. We might have to bribe a lot of people in Venezuela, but I'd rather have them on our payroll than have them on the payroll of the cartels and the communists, which is why we'll be going down and broadcasting all next week live from Caracas.
I can't wait.
Johnny will be on the streets, getting the pulse of the people, doing man on the street, and that is something everybody will look forward to.
I can't wait to see the movie clips he pulls.
That's right.
That will go with
in
it.
Espanol.
Harold, one thing that was interesting was the unity amongst Republicans and Democrats in Florida on this action.
Without question. First of all, Happy New Year to everybody, and it's good to be with everybody around the table. I was pleased to see that 2DP, and I was expecting also some pushback from some about whether or not Congress was advised or Congress was consulted or even Congress was communicated with. But we'll come to that in a little bit. I agree with Jesse. The execution of this mission, and we think about some of the nonsensical things that some say about how DEI has ruined our military. Our military has done Operation Midnight Hammer, and they've done this as well as other things since President Trump has been in office flawlessly. And this is another example of it. I applaud Jay Clayton, the Southern District, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District here, who obviously understands, as he shared this morning, how serious this case is, how prepared they have to be. And equally important, I think that Emily would agree, our system of law declares that you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. And the U.S. Attorney said that this morning. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky for me. I don't know exactly what the primary motive was for going in and getting Maduro, who is a bad guy. I understand why the Florida congressional delegation celebrated. There's a former member of the Tennessee delegation sitting on this table here who celebrated as well. But when the president said that, and I heard Mr. Rubio say we're going after a narco-terrorist, which we should have, and which we have, and I think that others have also said we need to meet these drug dealers where they are, and this guy is a drug dealer. And I believe that the U.S. Attorney's Office here will bring justice. The question is, are we there for the narco issue, or are we there because they have mismanaged the production of their natural resources? And one will say both. I give President Trump a lot of credit. He just basically said it out loud, said the quiet part out loud, said we're there also to ensure that they produce oil in a way that is conducive and consistent with the kind of reserves that they have. And I wonder aloud if that's what the country wants. President Trump a few weeks ago delivered a national televised address to talk about some of his economic accomplishments. If he's watching us this evening, I would encourage him to give another address to tell us exactly what we're hoping to do, what we're planning to do, and how long he thinks it may take us to do the things he wants us to do there. Because I happen to believe that focusing on our own hemisphere is something we should be doing. I've been saying since I've been on this show that this should be a priority of the administration. But if the priority is not catalyzing all of this growth and rule of law and governance in these countries to help those countries survive and help those countries flourish so they won't come to our country, but it's to help our oil companies and us make more money, I think the country would love to know a few more of the details there. But I'm one Democrat and one American who says congratulations to our military, and I say congratulations to President Trump for having the courage to go get this thug.
Emily, how do you think court went today for the Southern District of New York and Maduro?
I thought it was an interesting snapshot into the tenor that we can expect from Maduro and Flores and both of their respective attorneys. And respectively, Maduro, defiant, he still thinks he's in charge no matter what room he's in. His wife seemed a little bit more subservient, a little bit more defeated, as Paul Morrow said. Obviously, she has claimed that she broke a rib during the abduction. The attorneys came out sort of establishing assertiveness right away. And obviously, they talked about fees. They talked about the voluminous and complicated discovery that we can expect. But I think this underscores and highlights why the Southern District of New York, they are the gold standard venue to hear this. And we know that they have established this history in the past. And people are saying, why there? And how can we haul this person here? Since the 1800s, this country has settled that it doesn't matter if someone is abducted in a foreign country, and it doesn't matter if there are interests that are harmed. We can have it be in any venue, and the SDNY is, again, that gold standard for that reason. So if there's international criminal conduct, then we can hold essentially that prosecution anywhere that the U.S. interests have been harmed, any venue. SDNY in particular, however, number one, all money laundering and all of the banks, the financial headquarters of the world. So sort of conversationally, every dollar flows through New York, even if it's proverbial. We have a longstanding relationship, the SDNY, with people like FinCEN and the DEA and all of those elite agencies, and the special elite quality of our prosecutors there to deal specifically with the narco-terrorists, to deal specifically with the drug lords, to deal specifically with these global thugs that are used to having their way in any room, that really cannot be overstated. So I think going into this, and the judge himself said this, at the age of 92, he sounds a lot younger, but he said, look, I am ensuring that this defendant will have a fair trial. And if the appeals record is any indicator of what we are going into, then the success of SDNY is to be totally expected.
Greg, the Biden-Harris administration had a $25 million bounty on his head, but they didn't do anything,
They didn't.
They just waited to see if somebody would capture him. And then it's interesting to see some Democrats being so outraged that he actually did something.
I fear, Dana, that I've lost the ability to make complete sentences.
Oh, after the time off?
Yeah, I've spent 2 weeks with a 1-year-old. I've not had a conversation that is about anything.
Okay. Would you like to sing us a song about how you feel?
Yes.
Which is your favorite line?
Venezuela. What was? Oh yeah, 25 million. I think Trump should give that to the Delta Force. Right? Again, Democrats, they'll throw money at anything, but they won't actually do it. I feel like this is like, Trump is kind of like the parents that become the trustees of a drug-addled celebrity. Like, he's just going over there, he's just running the business until you can get back on your feet. The irony of this golden age is that it's got to be great to be a commie mayor in New York City, because Trump is outside your kingdom solving all of your problems. You know, it's like staunching the flow of drugs, reducing illegal immigration, slashing crime by gangs, easing the burden on your social programs that are designed for the citizens, all the things that we were going through under a Democrat mayor, under Adams and under Biden. But now Trump is handing Mamdani a soft landing, a honeymoon. All these horrible problems that existed under Biden are now going away. And, you know, Trump, I know people are saying, but Trump's against forever wars. Well, what's the opposite of a forever war? It's not no war. It's precise surgical action, taking out drug boats, bombing nuke facilities, extracting a dictator, so you don't have forever wars. It's not a forever war when you're lancing a zit. A forever war is what Trump is dealing with domestically with Democrats. You know, this complex fraud, you know, that is waged against us every day. And it's like, it's such a contrast between Trump's decisive action and kind of the Kafka-esque, you know, corruption of Democrat rule in every city that continues to keep going. Now, there's an argument, and Harold touched on it briefly, but then scampered away from it because he knew I would crush him like a bug.
Scampered.
Trump, you know, says it's about drugs, and people will say, well, if it's about drugs, why didn't he go after Mexico? Mexico is the primary source of fentanyl. You know, Venezuela isn't. Well, you do Venezuela so you don't have to do Mexico. You start small and you send a message. You work your way up to the ladder, to the big stuff. And who knows, you may not have to do it, because as you can see, people will start cooperating. Yep. The other interesting thing that people haven't brought up, but I will now, is that, you know, where does all the fentanyl precursors come from?
China.
Exactly, Dana. Thank you for completing that thought. Who was in Caracas? Is that how you say it? Hours before Maduro was snatched? Top Chinese diplomats. Why are they there? Because they're Maduro's sugar daddy. And basically, Venezuela is the crack house for China, where they pimp out whatever they need. So China's role in Venezuela is enough basis for the Monroe Doctrine to go in there and clean it up.
Peace through strength.
Yeah, what just happened?
I think you did well. You did well. I think she would be very proud of you.
Yeah.
You just need a little throw up on the sweater. I think you'll be fine. It'll get you
there was a lot of vomit. Some of it mine.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.